same decade. Completely different financial destinies. This isn't a story about luck. It isn't a story about inheritance or side hustles or crypto windfalls. It's a story about invisible habits, the ones most people never notice, never study, and never adopt. The ones that compound quietly in the background while everyone else is focused on earning more. Today, I'm going to walk you through the exact habits that separated those two coworkers, and more importantly, why middle-income earners are perfectly positioned to use them, if they start now. Habit 1. They pay themselves before they see the money. Here's what most people do with a paycheck. It lands in their account, they pay their bills, they spend on what they need and what they want, and at the end of the month, if anything's left, they save it. There's almost never anything left. Wealthy people, and I'm not talking about celebrities or tech billionaires, I'm talking about the quietly rich person living modestly in your neighborhood, do it in reverse. The money gets invested before it ever touches their checking account. It's automated, it's invisible, it never becomes spendable because it never feels available. The psychological difference is enormous. When you save what's left, saving is always optional. When you invest before you spend, investing is non-negotiable. One approach requires willpower every single month. The other requires a single decision, once. That coworker who retired at 55, on month 1 at the job, they set up an automatic transfer. Every payday, $500 moved into their investment account before they ever saw it. They built their life around what remained. They didn't find extra money to invest. They invested first and found a way to live on the rest. Over 25 years, that $500 per month at average market returns becomes over $500,000. Not from a raise, not from a windfall, from a single automated decision made on their first week of work. Habit 2. They are obsessively disinterested in looking rich. This one is uncomfortable to say, but it needs to be said. Most middle-income earners spend a disproportionate share of their income maintaining an image of financial success. The leased car that's slightly too expensive, the annual vacation posted on Instagram, the brand-name clothes bought on a credit card, the restaurant meals chosen partly because of how they sound when you tell people about them. None of this is shameful. It's deeply human, or wired to care about status. But quietly wealthy people have quietly opted out of that game. They drive unremarkable cars they own outright. They wear clothes that fit well but don't announce a brand. They take vacations but they don't take on debt to do it. They are completely unbothered by what their spending says about them because they measure their wealth differently. They measure it by their net worth, the number nobody sees, not by their lifestyle, the thing everyone sees. Here's the paradox. The people who look the richest often have the least. The people who look average are sometimes millionaires. Morgan Housel put it well in The Psychology of Money. When you see someone driving an expensive car, you rarely think about the driver. You think about yourself, what it would feel like if it were you. The driver paid a fortune for a status signal that mostly lands on people who don't notice them. Wealthy people understood this early, so they stopped performing wealth and started building it. Habit 3. They treat their financial education like a second job. Ask most people how compound interest actually works, and they'll give you a vague answer. Ask them about index funds versus actively managed funds, and they'll change the subject. Ask them what their effective tax rate is or how to use a Roth conversion, and you'll get a blank stare. This isn't stupidity. Nobody taught us this. School didn't cover it. Our parents often didn't model it. But wealthy people, the ones who built it themselves, treat financial literacy as a personal responsibility that nobody else is going to fulfill for them. They read one book on personal finance a year. They understand the basics of how the tax code works and how to use it. They know what they're invested in and roughly why. They can explain the concept of an emergency fund and why 6 months of expenses is the right number. They're not financial advisors. They're not economists. They just know enough to make good decisions and to avoid being taken advantage of. That coworker who retired at 55, they spent 20 minutes every Sunday morning reading about personal finance. Just 20 minutes, Over a decade, they quietly became one of the most financially literate people in any room they walked into. Not because they were smarter, because they decided it mattered. Habit 4. They make one financial decision and defend it for years. Here's a pattern that destroys middle-income finances slowly and silently. Every year, there's a new best option, a new savings account with a better rate, a new investment strategy someone swears by, a new credit card with better rewards, a new broker, a new app, a new approach. And every time someone switches, there's friction, tax implications, transfer fees, lost momentum, and worst of all, the psychological reset that makes them feel like they're starting over. Wealthy people make fewer financial decisions, not more. They research carefully, choose a system, and then leave it alone for years. They pick an index fund strategy and don't check it when the market drops. They automate their savings and don't tinker with the amount every time life gets expensive. They choose a budget framework and live inside it, rather than redesigning it quarterly. There's a term for what the average investor does instead. It's called performance chasing. You move money toward whatever did well last year and away from whatever didn't. Study after study shows that this behavior reliably produces returns below the market average. Discipline looks boring. Consistency looks boring. But boring in personal finance is the strategy that wins. Habit 5. They understand the difference between an asset and a liability, and they choose accordingly. Robert Kiyosaki oversimplified it, but he wasn't wrong about the core idea. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out. Most people spend their income building liabilities and calling them assets. They buy homes that cost more monthly than they could ever rent for. They buy boats that sit on trailers. They buy cars on 7-year loans. They collect subscriptions, memberships, and recurring fees for services they barely use. Meanwhile, true assets sit in brokerage accounts, growing quietly. They show up as equity in businesses. They appear as rental income from a second property. They compound in retirement accounts that most people underestimate until they're 50 and do the math and feel a rush of either relief or regret. Wealthy people ask one question before any significant purchase. Does this create value or consume it? Not every purchase has to be an asset. Life is meant to be enjoyed, but the ratio matters enormously. Someone whose income mostly flows towards assets builds wealth automatically. Someone whose income mostly flows towards liabilities works their entire life to maintain a lifestyle that owns them. Habit 6. They have a number and they know it exactly. If you asked most middle-income earners what their monthly expenses actually are, they'd guess, and they'd guess low. Wealthy people know their number, not approximately, exactly. They know what comes in each month after taxes. They know what goes out, broken down by category. They know what's left, and they know what that leftover amount is doing, where it's going, what it's earning, what it's working toward. This isn't obsessive budgeting, it's just awareness. You cannot improve what you don't measure, and you cannot measure what you've never looked at honestly. The wealthy coworkers sat down in month 1 with a spreadsheet. Nothing complicated. Income, fixed expenses, variable expenses, investment target. They updated it monthly for the first year until the habits were locked in. After that, they checked it quarterly, but they always knew their number. The other coworker never looked, not because they didn't care, but because looking felt uncomfortable. Looking meant confronting the gap between what they assumed their finances looked like and what they actually looked like. That gap never closes if you never see it. Here's what nobody tells you. The habits I just described require no special income. They don't require a raise, a windfall, or a second job. They require a shift in what you pay attention to. Wealthy people aren't more disciplined than you in every area of life. They've just chosen to be deliberate about money specifically. They've decided that financial freedom, the ability to choose how you spend your time, is worth more than the temporary pleasure of spending freely. They've done the math that most people avoid, and the math is simple. A middle-income earner who invests consistently, avoids lifestyle inflation, and gives compound interest 20 to 30 years to work, has a legitimate path to financial independence that has nothing to do with getting rich quick. It's quiet, it's slow, it's unsexy, and for the people who actually do it, it works every single time. The two coworkers I described at the beginning are sitting in the same break room right now. One of them started this week. The other one is waiting for the right moment. The right moment is not coming. The right moment is right now. The only question is which coworker you decide to be.